We've been talking to Jonathan Chait. He calls Donald Trump's pick for defense secretary his most dangerous cabinet pick. Hegseth has devoted a great deal of time to documenting his worldview, including 3 books published in the past 4 years. The man who emerges from the page appears to have sunk deeply into conspiracy theories that are bizarre even by contemporary Republican standards, but that have attracted strangely little attention. He considers himself to be at war with basically everybody to Trump's left, and it is by no means clear that he means metaphorically. Jonathan Chait is still with us, along with the rest of our folks, Susan Glasser, Cornell Belcher, and Jeremy Peters. So Jonathan, elaborate on that. The danger that he poses, not just to the way the Defense Department is going to operate overseas, right, but how it operates here at home, more specifically.
Yeah, I found his books fascinating, and I was surprised how little attention the ideas have gotten. There are a lot of strange ideas in these books, but the one that I think is most pertinent to how he would function as defense secretary is that he's trying to erase the line between the war that the United States fights between combatants overseas, war that he's participated in, and the war against domestic enemies to his political left. He frames the latter in very stark martial terms. He's erasing the distinction between how you would treat an enemy combatant and how you would treat a political opponent in the United States. And that's a really problematic idea in general, and especially because during his first term, Donald Trump wanted defense secretaries to shoot peaceful protesters in the United States, and his defense secretaries resisted those demands. Hegseth doesn't seem like someone who would resist those demands. He seems like someone who's enthusiastic about those demands. What
is the deal, Susan, with the vitriol toward the opposite political party? I mean, there's always been deep partisanship. There's always been angry words tossed back and forth. It's gotten uglier, arguably much uglier since the 90s. But this is different. The way that Donald Trump acolytes talk about Democrats is in dangerous terms, calling them the enemy from within, as Donald Trump did on the stump, and as a lot of these cabinet nominee picks will speak about them both publicly but also in their own books.
Yeah, I think this is an incredibly important point, Katie. Essentially, it's not just the enemy within, it's calling Democrats and opponents vermin, human scum is another term that Donald Trump has repeatedly used. So, many of his MAGA accolades, they're, parroting the leader in this, but more disturbingly, from Donald Trump, he in effect is parroting the language of sort of dictators and tyrants the world over. That's to me, and this was in his first term as well. It goes back to that, him using this language against opponents, is really the language that you don't hear from Democratic small d leaders in other countries or in our own country until Donald Trump. It's one of the ways in which he stands out the most. And I just think Jonathan's point in doing this piece on the nominee for the Defense Department is extremely important, because I think that's the shift that we've seen in the Republican Party's ideology, essentially from being a very national security focused party that's looking at the nature of American leadership and threats overseas to turning inward to the threat within. And I think he's very representative of what Donald Trump has done to the Republican Party and how he shifted even the ideology and the beliefs of the Republican Party.
Why is Donald Trump getting this chance to put people like Pete Hegseth in place, to try to get Tulsi Gabbard as DNI, RFK as Health and Human Services Director, Dr. Oz to oversee Medicare and Medicaid? We were talking about Matt Gaetz, now we're talking about Pam Bondi. Why is he getting the opportunity to put people in place that are so antithetical to the positions that they're being charged with holding?
Because he thinks he deserves it. He thinks he's earned it with this election.
Why did the voters give him that? Why are they saying to him, go ahead and break things?
Well, I don't think they're giving him carte blanche to pick whoever he wants and put people who are clearly unqualified into these incredibly powerful positions, I would imagine these picks do not poll very well, and they probably poll a lot under 50%, which is just about what Trump got in the election. If people even know who they are. But these are the behaviors of a guy who we know is reckless when he believes he's winning. And he did win. And he won in the popular vote. He won in the Electoral College, as he and his aides have reminded us constantly. So this is how he tends to act when he thinks he's got the political advantage. It is very reckless. And if these nominations fall apart, it won't be because of some war with the Republican establishment, which has always been kind of a go-to thing for him, right? Blame when Trump is losing, someone else is cheating him, and it's been either the Democrats or the Republican establishment. There are hardly any Republican establishment senators left. Trump has driven most of them out. So why are these nominees running into trouble? Because of Trump. He will have nobody to blame but himself, and I doubt he's going to be able to whip up the MAGA base into some type of frenzy over someone like Pete Hegseth.
I don't know. I just think he's very adept at skirting responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
He throws whoever is in front of him under the bus when he needs to. I wonder, Cornell, Donald Trump clearly learned from this past election. The lesson he got was that he could do whatever. I mean, he got pretty wild there towards November, saying just, whatever he wanted. The lesson it's clear that he took was that he believes at least he has a mandate and he can choose who he wants, and the voters are giving him the opportunity to get the retribution that he had been railing against. What is the lesson that Democrats are taking with how to go after this stuff, how to push back against this stuff after what they were not able to do in November?
Well, look, victories have multiple variables, and defeats have multiple variables, and there's far too many people throwing around like there's one cause of defeat. Look, what also missing from this conversation about Hegseth is white nationalism, right? I don't know why we keep dancing around that, right? He was targeted as an insider threat, right? And there is links and conversations about Christian nationalism and white nationalism, right? Let's not pretend that it's not about part of the problem. And the issue is here also is that you have someone who maybe links to white nationalists being in charge of our military. That's a real problem, and I think that's a real problem that we can have a conversation with American people with. But look, let's talk more about the election. Look, about.
No, I mean, how specifically, Cornell, how they push back, how they go and they tell the American public these people are not fit, how they send that message, where they put that message. The lesson of how to communicate to a broader swath of Americans.
Well, you communicate to a broader swath. Look, there was about 6 million voters missing from who voted for Biden who didn't bother to turn out this time around, right? And most of those voters happened to be black and brown. Donald Trump was able to actually grow the white share of the electorate, something that which quite frankly at the same time the white share of the electorate is shrinking. So it was something that was incredible. It's also called the Southern strategy, right? So he had about 2 million more white voters while we were down about 6 million brown voters. So all this conversation about how we got to get more sort of. And I hear you when you say working class, but what you're really talking about is white non-college voters. Look, 32% of non-white non-college voters voted for Biden when he won. 32% of them voted for Harris, and she lost. They made up a larger share of the electorate because he surged that vote. Part of this conversation should be how do we get back those 5 or 6 million voters who, for some reason, this time around, and they look a lot more like Diverse America, decided to sit this one out. Part of that conversation has to be the threats that people like these white nationalists and I'm sorry, they're not just loyalists, but people who have adoration and put Donald Trump first and foremost above the laws and above the work of the American people. I think that's part of the conversation that Democrats have to have with a broader swath of America.